Hello, and welcome to At Your End Step. My name is Morgan. I'm here with Mike.
Hello.
And we have another fun-filled episode for you folks this week. Before we jump into anything, just want to give a quick shout-out to our Patreon. You can find it at patreon.com/atyourendstep. And we wanted to give a hearty thank you to all of our patrons for helping us produce the show week in and week out. We couldn't do it without you, so thanks for keeping the lights on. All right. So we have several community topics to discuss here, and some of them are pretty exciting. The first one I think is we just got done with Modern Horizons. We're hot off the heels
You
of
say
it.
got done. I know you mean previews.
Previews,
but the set,
right. Hasn't
as of our
released yet.
recording, hasn't even released.
Correct. It releases at the end of this week, but we already have Magic 2020 cards. And this set, from art that we already had seen from it, we kind of get the indication, or have got the indication, that Chandra is going to be the main focus of this.
I feel like we saw packaging for this set, didn't we?
I don't think it was packaging. I think we've seen like key art.
Okay.
Or like
okay.
maybe box art.
Yeah, maybe it was box art, because I knew we had Chandra. Specifically, one of these Chandras.
That's correct. You did hear Mike correctly. It's one of these Chandras, because Chandra is going to have 4 cards in this set. We got 3 of them today, and the 4th one is still out there in the nebulous. But the 3 we got today are assumedly the only 3 that we are going to see, in a box, like that you're going to be able to open up in a booster pack, I should say. My assumption is that the 4th one is either going to be the Planeswalker deck Chandra that we get from the aforementioned Planeswalker decks, or a spicier option is a buy a box promo. But I think these Chandras that we got today are kind of varying levels of playable. We did get another uncommon one, and that's probably the least playable of the ones that we got, which kind of makes sense. It is interesting though, so I'll read it. It's Chandra Novice Pyromancer. It's 3 generic and a red for a legendary Planeswalker Chandra. She starts with 5 loyalty, and it's got 3 abilities, which is kind of important. We have a +1 elementals you control get +2/+zone to end of turn. A -1 that says add red. And then a -2 says Chandra Novice Pyromancer deals 2 damage to any target. So this one obviously is a uncommon Planeswalker with a plus ability. So it is theoretically something that can stick around and actually be able to tick up and tick down and have that sort of play at a uncommon level, which we haven't seen. And I think, speaking in a limited sense, I think this card's pretty strong.
Yeah, it's real strong. The mana ramp is strong. The 2 damage is strong.
Yeah.
And elementals might matter.
It could. We don't know what the archetypes of the set are going to be, and at least from the next Chandra we're talking about, elementals will play some sort of role, because we have a rare Chandra, and I'll let Mike read that one.
This is Chandra, Acolyte of Flame. 1 red for a legendary Planeswalker Chandra. Starts with 4 loyalty. Has 2 0 abilities. The first one is put a loyalty counter on each red Planeswalker you control. So this is really weird because it's a 0 that's a +1. But there's some ways that this interacts interestingly. The second one is 0. Create 2 1/1 red elemental creature tokens. They gain haste. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. So you just make 2 guys and attack. And then -2, you may cast target instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard. If that card would be put in your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. So, kind of interesting. Coming down on 3 and being able to make guys start attacking is certainly interesting. The 0 is also interesting when you consider some of the other cards in the format, namely Sargon. Was it the Master List?
Sargon the Master List.
Getting to tick that up essentially twice a turn seems interesting.
It's also really good with 4 mana Chandra.
Also true.
Because obviously, that's one of the rare Planeswalkers that does feel like it has an ultimate. That is, exile the top 7 cards, deal 7 damage to target Planeswalker or opponent, and then you can play the cards you've exiled, which is, a fairly powerful effect. And this supercharges that. And we've already seen 4 mana Chandra, be able to do that in a regular basis, it feels like, in standard, in varying stages of it. And the secondary 0 on this is probably maybe the lackluster effect. The make 2 1/1s. It works obviously really well with the uncommon Chandra. And I even really like the -2 on this, where it's just recast a lightning strike, or or even like a Wizard's Lightning, because is it 2 or 3?
It's 3.
Three.
It's specifically 3 because you can. Also, one of the things I think we need to point out for all of this, and I'm using a lot of hand motions now that you can't see, but so we get M2020 is going to M20 is going to be Chandra heavy. We have the Chandra comic, which just its second issue is just coming out, and then we got the Netflix announcement that we talked about last week. The actual card, like the actual art they showed with that announcement, was Exquisite Firecraft, which is Chandra, and Exquisite Firecraft is a signature Chandra spell that this can flash back. So
That's true.
There is some cohesiveness with this, and it does sort of hint that if we're going to get a main character in the animated series, it'll probably be Chandra.
Yeah.
So
It feels a little bit like putting the cart before the horse, because I don't know when that animated series is going to happen.
So I feel like I reference this guy a lot. I apologize. Chandras, who is or Chaz or Chaz. I always say this. Chaz Andres. I'm sorry, but yeah, finance guy, writer for Star City. Literally has consistently been the only reason I have premium. So there's a plug for you. But he wrote about that and talked about like what his time frame is for that, and then compared like what happened to, like, he examined what happened to like Marvel Comics, like old comic book issues when movies featuring those characters came out. He examined what happened to like Pokemon cards when like either Detective Pikachu or like different things like. It was pretty compelling. So it based on what he was sort of suggesting, like, and the time frame that he suggested, which I'm not gonna give away everything. It is content that you need to pay for it to hear, but I don't think it'll be that super far after. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it won't be like immediate, but it'll be close enough that you'll still have these cards playable in like standard.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, that's kind of what like nearly like maybe a year from now.
Something like that. So I want to mention, because we have more Chandra to talk about, but I do want to mention Acolyte of Flames. So the last Chandra, the Awakened Inferno, is a Chris Ron piece of art, but the other two are by an artist named Anna Steinbauer, who I did not know some of her stuff until I saw this art, and then I went and looked and realized she's got a number of Modern Horizons pieces, including the new Captain Sisay. The Chandra Acolyte of Flame art is actively, I think, now my favorite Chandra art. And I already looked up, and I'm probably going to buy a print of it because this shows Chandra as she's a little bit younger when she is like training on Regatha, and she is supposed to be like in like I caught it immediately, which is great, but she's supposed to be like meditating to control herself, but instead she's got like one eye open and she's like summoning red elementals like while she's sitting there meditating, and it is such a good flavorful Chandra piece. And the best thing is if you like zoom in on that piece, you can see that like one of the other monks is definitely like aghast, just like sitting there like mouth open, like it's like, hey, how would you have seen her playing with elementals unless you open up your eyes and stop meditating too? So in all reality, you're as bad as Chandra. I don't know what to tell you, man. Be a better teacher. So but I just wanted to throw it out there. She tweeted about it, and she had a link to her store where you can already buy prints for these arts. So do it, because this art is sweet. So do you want to mention Chandra Awakened Inferno?
I mean, like, I think you should do the.
Okay, I appreciate that. This was gonna. I've trust me. I've already started building the Chandra theme deck of my dreams because I'll be able to play it in standard, so that's exciting. Chandra Awakened Infernos, 4 generic red for a 6 loyalty legendary planeswalker Chandra. It has a static ability. And that static ability is this can't be countered. Oh, well, okay. I'm glad to know that my Chandra resolves. +2. Each opponent gets an emblem with, at the beginning of your upkeep, this emblem deals 1 damage to you. -3. Each Chandra Awakened Inferno deals 3 damage to each non-elemental creature. -X. Chandra Awakened Inferno deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker. If a permanent dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead. So not being able to be countered is sweet. The emblem is interesting. Like, depending on how you've built your deck and what you're trying to do, this is a clock that doesn't matter what goes around. Like, I think about, they're obviously not seeing a ton of play now, but Teferi's still seeing a ton of play in standard. Like, the decks where it was just like, well, I'm gonna get my Teferi emblem, and I'm gonna exile your permanents, and then I'll deck you. And it's like, well, not if you actually have to take 1 every turn, unfortunately. So,
and like that's gonna be a prominent pattern to play against those decks. If this gets played, it's just like cast this, tick up, and then
an emblem.
Then you have an emblem now, and now you have a clock that you can't get rid of. And even if you get rid of this, you have a clock. you cannot get like it's like when you get death cast against you in like a Final Fantasy game where it's like it's just like 20 seconds and you're like you got 20 seconds to figure this out, but you can't actually. You do not have any remedies to fix this one, buddy.
Yeah, I have one. It's called Phoenix Down, and it's after you've died. So the -3 is pretty powerful, like just getting down.
Yeah,
that. And
it reminds me of the other 6-mana Chandra.
Well, so I was going to say, this does seem to compare to that. That 6-mana Chandra was good at killing other planeswalkers by making 2 elementals or wiping the board. And this does a little bit of both, with the ability to come down and kill a major planeswalker or come down or a big creature or deal the mass damage. So
clock's like a quote unquote a little bit slower on this one. You know, you're not dealing chunks of 6 a turn, but they are like permanent damage that you are doing, and this one ticks up to like 8 immediately, which is wild.
Yeah, I think this card's very good.
I think so too.
Because if obviously the +1 is powerful, but you are just happy to keep plussing this until you have to minus it. And if you ever get to plus this more than like once, then your opponent have better find a quick window to beat you, because those emblems, it doesn't matter what you're drawing off the top, you're going down.
You are taking damage.
So and the art on this is cool. And again, so the storyline sort of here is the uncommon one is like a very young Chandra. We figured, the article says Ravnica, because I got a little frustrated when I thought it was Kaladesh, but it's not.
Yeah,
so because it would not have been Kaladesh.
The architecture is similar in like certain parts of Kaladesh.
Yeah, the domes are what I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then Chandra Acolyte of Flame is when she's like on Regatha, and she's part of the this and Mother Luti before she knew she was Jaya. And then the last one is like her when she's like gonna burn up the Eldrazi. Like this is her at the height of her power, essentially. Right. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. I'm interested to see what the other one is. Like I would assume it's a Planeswalker deck one, because I don't know what other. Well, you're gonna print an 8-mana Chandra Planeswalker then as the buy a box promo. Like I don't know what you're doing there, but I'm interested to see what happens with these going forward and what this means for the format. I do also not know if that means they're going to get more than one uncommon Planeswalker.
I don't think so. They specifically said that Chandra is the only one getting this treatment, and the other Planeswalkers are mythic rare. That is a fact.
That's still weird, but that's fine.
I think it's weird that it's. I want to say I think it's weird that it's Chandra. I think it's fine that it's Chandra. I wish it was a Planeswalker we haven't seen in a while, or don't know their backstory so well, if that makes any sense.
You wish it was Koth, and that's fine. I do too, buddy.
I wish it was Garrick, actually. That's actually who I wish it was. And they've already done that for core sets.
I couldn't care less about Garrick. I think he's a terrible character.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe like they got rid of him because like he has run his course and like doesn't need to be, and he is associated with like bad parts of the Magic community, and I get that.
I think like they did so much to save Nissa's characterization, like when they had to retcon her just overt racism. They gave a lot of her like Garrick's qualities to her, like the in tune with nature, less of a focus on beasts, more of a focus on like
trees,
elementals, whatever. But like they took a lot of that, like Garrick was like had this big axe into these things, but was like in tune with nature, in tune with the wild, like instead he just became, once he became like this demon thing, it was just like Garrick smash, and it's like, so you're a bad Hulk? I don't understand. Like
I don't really.
I don't mean bad as an evil. I mean like underdeveloped.
Yeah.
Like
no,
like
I don't
the Gray
Hulk,
like somebody didn't cook him enough.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think like they have kind of, I think it's it could be, and it is something that they said they're going to revisit in the future. So like, I'll wait till then.
Yeah, I think like I don't disagree with you because I like seeing newer characters, but in a core set, I think like they are trying to court a lot of different things, and I don't know what the core sets are the place for the new characters. So I do think that Chandra is a character that has gone through. They have tried real hard to fix, and I think Chandra is emblematic of like the problems with red in general in Magic, because how do you make a compelling red character, which they've gotten a lot better with her, and Jaya was helpful as well in characterizing her better, but for a long time it was like, I'm mad, fire, right? Which is like fine, but I don't know. I also think that this is me being a little more cynical, and obviously they've had these in development for a long time, but there is definitely something to be said with like writing the I have a powerful multiplanar being whose ability is to burn things, and when they get angry or charge up, they glow in a yellow and orange way. Do you understand what I'm saying here? Like, why wouldn't you keep cashing in on the Captain Marvel train and those things? Like, this is not it's not uncalculated, if that makes sense.
No, I get
Again,
that.
it comes out in a long time ahead, but like once they see the wave, like WotC will surf with the best of them. You know what I mean? We'll ride that wave.
So, there. I don't know if you saw any of this on Twitter or how closely or how many degrees away you are from this person, but the Twitter user is Gear Per Gears at Gear Per Gears.
Yes, I know who you're talking about. Yes,
they were really. I think they were very frustrated by this reveal, and
I don't blame them.
I don't blame them either. And if you're not aware, like Chandra is from Kaladesh. Kaladesh is definitely it takes inspiration from India, as its origins, sort of in the real world, quote unquote. And there's been, I think, a pretty constant frustration of Chandra being represented as a white woman,
with red hair and freckles,
right, and being from Kaladesh, and I think
and not looking like her parents at all.
No, and it's I think it's a true and genuine frustration, and I read their tweets that they had today, and I couldn't disagree with them, and I felt like that feels like a misstep to me, to be perfectly honest, for them not to just bite the bullet and just retcon her a little bit.
Yeah, I think
and just like fix what they've done. Like they thought of this character before thinking of any of the backstory, and they've retconned her backstory. So like just fix the character to be true to what she's trying to be representative of.
I mean, I think they have not always been very good at this. The whole Gideon, Jura, Kithian or thing, like, right. And then subtly making him look a little bit more Mediterranean. Correct. Than just like white guy with brown hair. So, right. I think like, and the account you're talking about, and the person that you're talking about, expressed frustration in general, if I remember correctly, with Kaladesh being like, yes, it's using these things, but they are a skin as opposed to like a celebration.
Yeah,
and I think like I can't argue with that, and there's probably some frustration too with the. If you look at the sequencing of our top-down sets, when you think of, like, we did Theros, and then we did Amonkhet, and then we did Kaladesh, and it's like, well, okay, you probably shouldn't be comparing, like, there's, like, you're using fantasy tropes and, like, talking about ancient culture, like, but of, like, different color, and then you're like, oh, but then here's Indian. It's like, you got to be real careful how you traverse here. And I can't say that they threaded that needle correctly. I think Jane Ellie also this week on the Vorthoscast suggested that like he was hoping that when we saw Chandra next, she might be a little bit like, looked more like her mother, if that makes sense. Because like Pia and Kieran Allard look drastically different. Like, I don't like, did she get red hair because she likes fire? Like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a legit frustration and something that, has to be accounted for. And like, myself, I said I really like the art on that piece because I like that character, but that's a little bit of my privilege showing where I can just kind of like that character because the heritage wasn't something that I had to consider before, and I should now, and it's very legitimate.
I think it's tough. I think it's tough to want to build these characters into places where the initial design would have never placed them. You know what I mean? Where there's this sort of disconnection between like the character's name and everything like that, and like having to put that into paper and make that realized and give these characters depth, and then having a disconnect between like what you're trying to do and what you're doing and what you're trying to represent. And I think like somewhere down the line they have to bite the bullet and just do it. And I think now would have been a good time, like. And just been like, hey, we released this. This is why we're doing it, and we're trying to do the right thing. But instead, I think they just kind of with this some of this art, it feels like they kind of just doubled down and wanted to hold true to what they've done previously. And I think like that is like a continued frustration for someone who feels like their heritage inside the game is kind of being a little bit misrepresented, or the culture's being taken advantage of and being hijacked to like make profit for a company, and then they could do this slight little thing to, I don't know, make it a little bit better and decide not to. And I think that's genuinely frustrating. And I just felt it was definitely important to point out, to kind of acknowledge and give Shivam a little bit of a signal boost, as it were, because I think his frustrations are very well founded.
And I do wish maybe Watsy just even reach out to him, just maybe just to have those conversations a little more personally. And I mean, even like bring them in. You know what I mean? Hey, come give us your ideas on this. Come give us some insight.
Yeah.
They need that.
He's definitely someone who has written a lot and is a part of a few different podcasts and has guested on a few different podcasts to discuss this topic. So there's definitely stuff out there for them to read by him for sure. And it's just I thought it was definitely something that was worth acknowledging and looking at and thinking about if you haven't thought about it. So next up, we have some updates for Magic Online. There was I was just reading the way that we chose to represent it, but there was a little bit of an issue with the mocks that happened over the weekend. So the mocks event, it crashed hard, and everyone was lost. They were looking around for the orcs. But there were no orcs. The orcs were gone.
They were looking for hours.
Yeah.
I can't. We were driving back from Roanoke. We were on Twitter looking at this, and it was just like multiple people being like screaming into the void, "Watsy, respond to this!" And Watsy never came.
They just turned off the lights, left for the weekend. Peace out.
Towards the end of Scrubs. Not the terrible final season with the kids. That's bad. But there's a joke about what happens when a main character leaves, and JD has this whole thing. He's like, "Well, I'm leaving," and he shuts the lights onto the hospital, and then you just hear all the crash carts going. And he's like, "Oh, my bad," because you don't just walk out and leave. You're running a tournament with major prize on the line. You don't have anybody sitting in the office.
Yep, holding it down.
What?
No.
You have one of those. You just have a little button with one of those birds that just dips for water.
Yep.
Just beep, beep. We thought it could take care of it. Unreal.
Yeah, it's a bad look. And again, we talked about them kind of getting rid of their customer service for Magic Online, and this makes it look bad. So they announced today that there's gonna be a rescheduled event for July 7th. So congrats, guys. Hopefully that one won't crash. I guess
it won't. Trust them.
Yeah, no, thank you. I would rather not.
Wink, the biggest wink. Yeah, I don't know. It's frustrating, and I they should have known, because Magic Online did just get a pretty big facelift. If you haven't seen the most recent update, and it looked nice, but come on, that much change, you knew it had to take 2 steps forward and then take 2 steps back.
Mm-hmm.
Because opposites attract. Sorry, I couldn't. Paula Abdul, man.
Oh, anyway. So next up, we actually have some more information about Mythic Championship 3, which is going to be the first arena Mythic Championship. Mainly that we got our full invitee list, so our MPL players and our Challenger players, which is sort of the new word that's been floating around to talk about people who are not in the MPL. Congratulations, if you're not in the MPL, you're all Challengers.
I saw somebody tweet out that congratulations to Watsy for having no one leave the MPL for a month.
Sick bird.
I was great. Man, that's really good.
That's great. And there are definitely some notable names here on the invite list. Of course, so we had the people that qualified through the Mythic Championship qualifier weekend. They are, of course, here. And we have our 16 invitees that are specifically invited to this event as well. So definitely a lot of people. I do know that there was a tweet that was kind of making the rounds today about, it was tweeted by a prominent female grinder who said that she felt like, even though these things are happening and that in certain sectors of the game there's definitely more of a diverse sort of representation, but specifically as someone who is trying to qualify for these kind of tournaments, felt a little bit lost by trying to qualify through the means that are typically there, through going to Mythic Champion, not the Mythic Champions, but Grand Prix and stuff like that.
Was it Teresa Foe?
No.
I know she had posted a picture of somebody like who was like, "How'd you qualify?" and she's like,
And so I think like that is probably that is probably a genuine feeling that is shared by a lot of people who call themselves grinders and want to qualify for things like this. But I can't imagine how much it's absolutely magnified for someone who is not as quote unquote I don't even want to say who's genuinely someone who does not feel as welcomed in a competitive tournament scene due to how the community is, and like it's just got to be magnified to be like this is what you said to do to like qualify for this, and then it's like now you have all these weird rules that you're not clear about on how this works, and like the only clear way to do it somehow does not work all the time. So
I feel like I'm of two minds of this, and I want to explain that a little bit. So it's important that we remember that like WotC stopped calling these Pro Tours for a reason. Part of that is because they wanted to have new branding, but part of it is because they did want to communicate that these weren't like Pro Tours.
right.
I do still think though that they are not making enough of a differentiation between like these mythic these mythic championships that are arena only versus paper, because this already feels more like the mythic invitational than a mythic championship. Case in point, the most recent Pro Tour winner is not invited to this.
I did see that. He literally tweeted out, "What do I have to win to get qualified for this?"
Well, I mean, like I mentioned like Gregory Orange is on this list, but like he and his team also had that same punishment for like they didn't get invited to something even though they just won a Pro Tour.
Right, and this is like making up for that.
But like the winner of the MOCS also isn't on here, and then the person who came in second in the MOCS is the one that got the most buzz is like Numat Thanami, who's also not here. And if you're suggesting that like the criteria then isn't just like play skill, okay, well it's not results, it's your stream and your this and that. I don't know if you guys are paying attention, but on Friday, most of the day, I think all of the time the MPL was streaming. SEG in the SEG Invitational on a Friday was beating the MPL by about 3,000 people. And at multiple points when Numat Thanami was streaming, he was beating the MPL too.
Yeah.
So like when people say eat the MPL, Numat did. He ate their whole lunch.
Yeah.
So like it's just weird. Like so it can't just be streaming numbers. Like what is it?
Right. And I did find the tweet I was thinking of. It's by at the Blood Sower. I believe that her name is Tania.
Okay.
TANIA. It says, "I appreciate the efforts to diversity. Efforts to diversify the game, but I say that with painful sincerity that the changes taking place have alienated me as a player aspiring to climb the levels of the game. I may be a woman in Magic, but I am a grinder and an aspiring pro level player too, and I don't feel that I am seen at all." Is what she tweeted out,
and I think that's more than fair. I think that just like you and I, it was funny just talking. So we're going to talk about Roanoke and the Invitational, but like I went with Dave. Morgan opted out to go, and Dave and I have talked a fair amount about how like we spent a number of years, even on this podcast, grinding a ton, and have both felt us sort of move away from that because of professional lives, family lives, things like that.
Yeah,
but like couldn't imagine trying to start being a grinder now. Like unless you're doing the SCG tour, like
if that's what you have the availability to do, then like that makes sense. If you're living on the East Coast or
right.
the eastern half of the United States where you can feasibly get to enough events reasonably, like that's where you're going to be doing it.
Like the money here is nice. Like you get a min cash of 7,500, but it also mentions like we get mythic points, and they give down a breakdown of like the mythic points you get at this event. But those don't mean anything. What do mythic points get you? Mm-hmm. Like, what is that? Like, they're literally going to give out. Like, if you win this mythic invitation, you get 50 mythic points. And if you all come together and combine your mythic points, that you can get the VCR from 1997 that's been up on the top shelf since we opened up the place.
You gotta pull your tickets together so you get the biggest stuffed animal, man.
I mean, because like seriously, that's all. What are they good for? We don't know. And like. WotC could very well give out these numbers of points and then look at their breakdown and go, "Oh crap, we messed up," and have to readjust these points. Like the comparison of 50 like to 11, right? Like when you're talking about how 50 would have made you platinum, and when you're talking about pro points, like there's a real issue here. So congratulations to all the players who are there. I'm excited for some of them. I definitely saw some pretty funny jokes about like, like Watsy's like, we're trying to diversify our invites. LSV gets a special invite because like somebody else was like, yeah, he needed it. he needed it. And I'm glad to see LSV there, but there's just so much, and like Kaibuda, I'm glad to see him here. That's hilarious to me. But like, it is just odd when I look at this and just think like, oh, okay, like, give me some reasoning behind your decisions. I'm happy for everyone. I'm glad that we're doing these things, but tell me how I can do that. Besides, because like right now, like you could say like, oh well, you get the top 1,000 in arena, and then you get to go to a special tournament. When's that tournament? I don't know when the next one is. When I click my little invite thing on arena right now, and it says like more details, it just takes me to the generic page for like Mythic Championships. There's no dates. There's nothing. Like what? So. I don't know.
They'll announce it later, bud. Don't worry about it.
I also want to make mention of the casters. So we have our play-by-plays are Marshall Sutcliffe and Alias V. We have Day 9 as a host. Maria Bartoldi is a desk host. Becca Scott is a reporter who she's been doing that even for the MPL.
Yeah, and she was there for the Invitational.
Cedric Phillips there as an analyst who's also been doing MPL stuff. And Paul Chian as an analyst. Where's Rich Hagon? No, you've already lost BDM. You're gonna just like delete Rich Hagon too?
He's just not here, I guess. I think it's cool they got Cedric though.
I think it's cool they got Cedric too.
I think it's a good move.
Yeah.
He hasn't been helping them out with MPL stats, unfortunately, but hey.
I wonder if Cedric quits before the actual thing.
Man, wouldn't that be the move?
I mean, he's with Jerry. Get that Jerry on your shoulder, being like, integrity move would be not to do this. And Cedric's like, yeah, but I've worked really hard for this. And he's like, okay. I mean, it's a good team. I was just sad to see Rich Hagon. I guess I don't know. Makes me sad.
You'll just have to wait for the paper one. Maybe he only does paper.
But
he's pretty old school.
I do wish I think like they're going to have to maybe work on differentiating the branding here a little bit then.
Yeah, 100%.
Because these aren't the same events, and you're calling them the same event.
They sure aren't. So. Tell you what, they are not. But like they aren't in any way, shape, or form. It feels like you don't have nearly the same amount of people in attendance. You don't have the same prize pools. You don't have the same faces consistently. Who are going to be your windows into the tournament. And it's going to look different because it's all going to be Magic Arena. Now it is held in one central location. From what I understand.
Yeah, it's in Vegas.
So like that's at least something, and I think it's going to be a similar
to the Mythic Invitational.
It's
and that's good. That was a good.
That.
I'm interested to see what the numbers look like here, especially with the some articles we've gotten recently that suggested the numbers of viewers that we had for the Mythic Invitational were a sham. So that's at least interesting. I want to talk about the MPL for a second. I know we've spent a lot of time on these topics. I'll be very honest. I don't care how much lists we talk about, but so I know Saffron Olive a little bit ago made mention of how he didn't really like the MPL because it was all like, just like we saw with the Mythic Invitational, they made it so that the 4 people who won their MPL divisions get an automatic buy into day 2. Mm-hmm. Which is a huge prize.
Yeah, no joke.
And those were Brad Nelson, Ray Saito, BBD, and Ken Yukihiro, which is impressive. Now, he talked about how by making it purely competitive, though, then you're losing a lot of possible viewers for the MPL. And there was a lot of discussion to that. He actually got some pretty negative backlash about it, which I thought was odd. But essentially discussing like where's the role of like fun or spectacle. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how many times you want to watch Mono White bash against each other in the MPL. Yeah. I will say, a month out from him saying that, the MPL numbers tell a story that he might be right. And I do question what the goal of the MPL is here. When the people I just listed, and I think like BBD one, and Brad Nelson too, are people that people really want to watch, and you made the goal of your MPL so that they can't compete on day 1
to watch them less.
Like, am I crazy? Isn't that weird?
Yeah,
Like buys are
yeah.
important. Like it's not like this is the only place that does that. Like the Patriots get a buy in the NFL, and it's not like, well, are we really incentivizing them to not be on TV? Like I know there's a line for this, but like half of your tournament, they are not going to be in half of your tournament, and that was the goal, was to get them out of half the tournament. I wonder if they need to go back and review this. Maybe not make it as such a huge, because like monetarily, because what's the cut? I don't even know how many people make day two. Day two, top 16. Okay, so they are automatically into the top 16, meaning 12 of the other 64 players are going to get in. So if we look at the cash breakdown, top 16 is 12,000. So you get a $5,000 bonus essentially for automatically getting into day two.
Yeah,
that's significant.
Yeah, it's not a little bit of money.
But I wonder if like that the MPL could be better served in having some more fun. I mean, look at the formats they've been putting on Arena, like Singleton, all these things. Like maybe the MPL should be playing those formats that week. Like I wonder if the MPL numbers and like the weirdness of how this now looks, like seeing how the seeding actually ends up working, like makes them reconsider it a little bit. Because yeah, I think like it also helps with like some of the people they brought in. When I think of like Savich or like anybody else, like maybe the most competitive deck isn't something you want to see them do. Like, what do they normally do on their stream? What's made their stream so compelling? Maybe you should open it up a little bit. So, I guess it's just me sort of musing there a little bit. But I agreed with Saffron Olive when he tweeted about that. Like, questioning what the goal of the MPL is, and of course that's been the hot topic issue now for a month. But when you have the MPL barely hitting 2K viewers, and I just don't know. I don't know what you're supposed to do with it. And again, the goal is to not see the better player for half a tournament.
Correct.
That is funny to me. So,
yeah, I don't like. I don't know. The issue is, right. So the issue is, we look at a traditional esports sort of dynamic. Is like you don't have this weird dichotomy between like paper and digital. It's just all digital. So your tournaments that you're running every week. Theoretically, let's say there's something every week that's going on, you can dedicate all your time and energy into that. And not to mention that, depending on what tournament it is, you might have a different organizer. Maybe it's not under the, this or that, or you have other options. And that's kind of where we see like with Star City in the paper side. But, WotC is really taken a step back from like casting, Grand Prix, to actually like broadcasting those and trying to replace it with this, but it's just not the same thing. Because I think like you're right with when you're saying like there's a level of like fun that you can potentially have at a Grand Prix, right? Because you never know what you're going to get. It's not just going to be. It's not always going to be like
Grand Prix is a box of chocolates.
Correct, exactly. You might get you might see some up and comers. You might see some people with some like off the wall decks. You won't necessarily see in MPL league play because people are competing for like $5,000 theoretically, and they're more cautious and measured with the decisions that they make. They're not as as much risk takers as some random person going to a Grand Prix and like, I'm going to try to spike this tournament with this wacky brew. And sometimes those are fun to see. Like, you remember the offering deck, the
Harmless offering deck.
Yeah, remember seeing that. Like, that's exciting to see because like you just don't get those opportunities with the MPL. Like you
100%. And I think that was Olive's point too. Is like you are missing on that. You're missing out on those unique things. I think one of the coolest things about the Mythic Invitationals were the players who brought unique decks, like the dinosaurs decks that were all around, things like that. It helped. It helped with the viewership. It helped you like, oh my gosh, this card's in play. What is this interaction?
Right. And I think like your idea of like pushing them towards the unique formats that are offered on, Magic Arena on a weekly basis makes sense because like, cool. Like I understand that you want to be like hyper competitive, but let's try to focus that into a different thing that is interesting for people to watch. And I like that. So,
yeah, me too.
The last thing that we want to discuss here is Star City Games Con, or SCG Con. And apparently, for Mike, it was more of a convention than ever.
Yeah, I wanted to put this in here because I think when we first went to SCG Con, the concept of it being a convention, an SCG Con, just wasn't there. It was an invitational. Like they had tried some things and it didn't really work.
An invitational, you couldn't bring your monster inside a.
Yeah, you still can't do that.
Boo.
Hate to tell you, Roanoke. I will say this: we had some real good food in Roanoke, but it also never once stopped raining the entire time we were in Roanoke. So you know what, Roanoke still suck. But shout out to the pizza place though that had pizza that was larger than my upper body, and Dave and I punted and ordered 2 pieces of pizza because we assumed it was going to be like a Sbarro or something, and we were hungry, and then the pizza came out and we didn't know what to do. So if you saw any of the pictures on Twitter of the pizza forts,
Oh yeah,
it was the boxes from that place, 28-inch pizzas. So
that's a big pizza.
But they didn't have the pizza sitting there when you order the slices. So we were just like, yeah, they're regular size slices. Nope.
They were not.
No.
Interesting.
Anyways,
Well, you know what? You just said something that made me sad that I wasn't there because I wanted some big slice pizza.
I gotta tell you, that big slice pizza, I got mac and cheese on mine, and I thought I was gonna go into a coma afterwards. I'm showing Morgan a picture of this pizza.
That is obscene.
Yeah,
that looks like when they in the movies when like a big giant like hands something to like a regular human sized character, and it's just like they have to like make that movie magic, right? So they make like an oversized or like to the giant it's a very small like a regular sized piece of pizza,
or just a regular pizza, or
and then when the human gets it, that's what you get. That's the giant sized pizza that the giant handed to you.
That's great. But this year felt more like a convention. So day one, we had the Invitational, and our whole card did very poorly. I registered 38 Mountains, 20 in Standard, 18 in Modern, and experienced some pretty frustrating variants. A lot of game 3 losses. I lost to like Red, White, Feather, and just like, the most flooding. Like I was like, oh, I registered all these mountains, and I saw almost all of them. So it was a rough day.
Yeah.
But when I wasn't playing Magic, I won't say it was all positive because they made some weird decisions. There was no open, like in the past there's been opens, and I say, we didn't go to the one last year or in the winter, so this has been updated since then. But like they had an MCQ on Friday, but not Saturday. They had summer championships on Sunday, not Saturday. They did have the vintage Play for Power, which local player is a friend of ours, top aided, so it was pretty sweet. But otherwise, though, like when I was done with that, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go. Like, I brought a whole bunch of cards to get signed from the various artists who were there, and they had their own section, and it was awesome. Like, Noah Bradley had a History of Benalia on canvas that was taller than me. Oh my gosh, it was gorgeous and so incredibly expensive. But I went around and like got things signed, and I had some really fun conversations with the artists because it was like, it was in the same hall as like the main tournament, but it felt like very much like, this is the area for artists. You weren't brushing up against people. They weren't back in a corner. I got to have I got my Bark Dargans. If you didn't see it, I tweeted out a picture of it.
I saw that. It was great.
So his manager, and I don't know if it was his wife or not, because often that is fairly common. But she was like she was loving it. She was like, "Oh my gosh, you have to do this." And he was like, "Yeah, all right, I'll do this." So, but I got to go and do all that. They had a stage set up with like the rows of chairs so they could do some events. We watched, they had their paint with Ken Meyer Jr. there, which I did not take part in, but he recreated
Kurt Ape,
and they were selling that for charity. We did go and watch Judge JP, love you, buddy.
Friend of the show. He's been on the show before.
Yeah,
so.
if you've been to a Magic event in the Midwest, you've probably seen him.
Yeah,
so
you probably know who JP is.
But he got to put on a sweet suit and get up and do a Jeopardy game with Gavin Verhey, BDM, and I can't remember the third person's name. He does Command Zone, or he does Commander Live, Commander Versus for SCG.
Okay, I can't remember.
And it was really cool to see them go through and do that. Did a good job hosting. I got to harass Gavin Verhey about Brawl, so that was sweet. I told him that we had like almost 30 decks between like our group, and he literally almost hugged me. He was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I was like, "It's like, yeah." So like, throw us a bone, Gavin.
Anything.
So he said to hold out hope. He said he couldn't. He said, wait, be patient for at least the end of the year. And I was like, okay, I can do that. But like they had that set up. They have a video game area in the middle, which was there when we first came. But there's an ice hockey rink in there. They also took that for play space. So you had to like navigate between the two. Came third in a trivia show. The Saturday, they had another one Friday night too that we just missed. But it felt like a con. There was a lot of things I could go and do as opposed to it being called SCG Con and me being like, oh, there's a charging station, so that's cool.
Yeah, correct.
I do want to say there was a bold choice at this con, though. Chick-fil-A definitely had a booth in there, and we were joking about how bold it would be to be like in this environment, just walking up and buying a lot of Chick-fil-A, and they had a lot of extra sandwiches at the end of the tournament. They were just handing them all out to judges for free. So good on people, but like there have to be some self-awareness where you're like, maybe this isn't the place to buy a Chick-fil-A sandwich.
Like this, no. No. Read the room.
Read the room. So it was I despite not doing well in pretty much anything, I also did like 4 or 5 Modern Horizons drafts, and I won one of them. So that was cool. But like it was fun, and like, oh, the commander area was amazing. You've probably seen some pictures. But they had their own commander area sectioned off, so you weren't fighting for table space. And they printed a banner that had all the different legends that could be commanders, and like some of the planeswalkers too.
Yeah.
And when you played with one, you were supposed to go up and stamp yours. And by the end of the weekend, it was really cool. So it was just, the feature match area looked great. If you saw the addition of the new chairs,
Yeah, Carnox.
yeah, those were.
I mean, I don't want to get sponsored by Carnox. No offense to Comic-Con, our lovely sponsor, but like. You can, I mean, like, I know I'm
why not both?
I'm literally sitting in a gaming chair right now, but those CarX chairs, first of all, they look tall, and I'm a tall person. I'm like 6'1", so I'm somewhat tall. But it'd be nice to have like the extra length in the chair.
As someone who watches Morgan sit in a comfy gaming chair while I sit in a folding chair in his house, and I'm the guest, yeah, I would love to have a.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
He's happy you have a chair at all.
Wow, this is what I work with to bring you content. So
now, to be fair, you do the exact same thing when we are at your house.
Yeah, of course I do. It's my house.
I had to defend my honor there.
But so it was just like, again, all of it came together to feel con-like. So it would still be better if I wasn't getting literally my bag checked and every orifice. It's like literally opening everything, including opening my Switch. Like I had to open up my Switch container because, like, I guess, and like
stuff some sodas in there.
Here's the best part. You want to know the truth?
Yeah.
I brought in a ton of food each time. Do you know where I hid it? Under the Switch. Because I opened the thing that had the Switch. They asked me to open the Switch, and I said, yep, and then that was it. Do you know where a bunch of people were
writing? The Burton Center's going to come after you now.
Yeah, come get me.
They're releasing their drones.
Guess
they're
what?
Track you down.
I ate the evidence. Do you know what most people were doing? Putting them in there, bringing extra magic boxes with them, and just stuffing them full of snacks.
Gosh, that's chef's kiss to that.
But it's just like
to everyone that did that.
It's that easy to get through it. So why are you doing it?
I'm gonna get some of the longer like Ultimate Guard things. Put like cans of soda in there.
Yeah, perfect. Can you get one that's actually a cooler? Yeah, it's actually chilled inside.
Hey, Cedric, I know you're really close with Ultimate Guard, so make the cooler.
When I talked. When I talked to Gavin Ver, he had a lunchbox in hand.
Whoa!
Like he was carrying it around. So I don't even want to hear it.
That sounds like preferential treatment.
Yeah, I'm
to,
sure it
VIPs.
is. I still wish that was something they would fix. Where they're like, hey, look at all the people we bring here. Like we're paying you a lot of money for this space. Yeah. Maybe stop harassing the guests.
Yeah, and I know that they probably had actual convention.
Of course they did.
Kiosks open, and that's why. And that's the same. I hate to say
same thing in Columbus,
and they just don't.
Literally Gen Con.
Yeah. I can't imagine them being able to police that reasonably.
No, but
Gen Con.
here's the thing. I don't think they were policing this one reasonably. It was pouring down rain. We had to stand in line every morning to get in.
Yeah, and get rained on.
So
that's a great experience.
So and that's a negative thing that's a little bit separate. I'm just saying this is the first time I've gone to something that was called a Magic convention. Magic Fests don't feel like fests. This felt like a con. To some extent, it felt like a con. So
yeah, I think that if they are trying to measure a level of success, I think they would have to mark this one as being successful.
I think you have to look at Star City, and I wish that WotC would pay more attention, or at least try to support Star City more, because they are the only ones that have a clear tournament structure, clear goals in mind when you do things.
They're the ones that have figured it out, right?
They are the ones who figured it out. They brought back the Players Championship. There was a lot of celebratory things this weekend that was cool to be a part of, and GPs don't feel like that anymore. So
no, GPs feel like overpriced
graveyards.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like a foiled dredge deck.
There you go. You did it.
Overpriced graveyards?
I mean, Dredge is out. Hogak is in. I don't know if you know this yet.
I hate Hogak.
Hogak's in.
I hate him.
I know, and he's super good. So get wrecked.
I will.
in your nightmares. Those holes are coming for you.
That's insensitive.
It is. Welcome to friendship.
I'm gonna light your chair on fire.
Moving on. Before we head into the competitive segment, we're going to talk more about the Star City Games Invitational. I definitely want to give a quick shout out to our lovely sponsor, Comic Town. They're going to be holding their MCQ this Saturday, June 15th. It is a $45 entry fee, and you can pre-register, so I do suggest you do so before slots run out. And I know that Mike and I will both be in attendance, and so if you do decide to come out, we will see you there. All right, competitive. So we had the Invitational, of course, it was I watched definitely a lot of it. There were a lot of in the top 8. There were a lot of Game 5 deciders, which is really exciting, and definitely a whole lot of pretty interesting matchups. It did get towards the top. It did get a little. Not so diverse, unfortunately. But the overall tournament winner was Colin Roundtree, defeating Kevin Thaniket in the finals. It was a Esper Superheroes versus Sultai Dreadhorde. And the Esper Superheroes list is the sort of a Planeswalker deck that's still playing Hero Precinct 1. So
Pretty close to the Ben Friedman list.
Correct. And the Sultai Dreadhorde list is something that I guess I had heard a little bit about, but not seen a list yet. So this was kind of basically it's kind of similar to your traditional Sultai list, and a 4-color Dreadhorde list just dropping the white, so you don't see the fairies or anything like that. But you do get the option of not being so. Obviously, dependent on a lot of good mana draws. You don't have to. You're not leaning on the interplanar beacon, and you're able to cast a little bit more spells, if that makes any sense. And again, you are looking similar to a old school sort of Sultai list, and the superheroes list and the Sultai list were also lists that showed up in 3rd and 4th place, piloted by Dan Jessup and Jonathan Hobbs, I believe, was the other superheroes list.
Shout out to Jonathan Hobbs, an indie-based player who's having a pretty good year.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
he was a lot of people's picks to win the entire tournament as time went on. So it was people were upset that their picks kind of got squashed there on coverage and stuff like that. But
he's qualified for Barcelona very recently too, so he's heating up
for sure. But these the Sultai Dreadhorde list, even though it wasn't the winning list, I think this is where 4-color Dreadhorde is probably going to stay. I don't think you're going to see any of the 4-color or very many of the 4-color lists continuing to exist, because this just feels like everything that you want to do, and it's kind of really showing how powerful Nissa is. This is just another one of those decks that's just it's just we're gonna be playing Nissa.
Obviously, as for Super Friends won this invitational, but it's a split format.
Yeah,
I think we talk about Taipei. You'll see how dominating Nissa really is becoming.
Yeah.
And even with the Summer Championship, in both in all the Sultai lists, and then the Simic and the Bant Ramp decks as well. I've been playing Bant Ramp this week, and I'm maybe trying to I gotta figure out how to get Hydra Crassus, but maybe trying to play that deck this weekend.
Yeah.
Nissa feels really gross. I think when we talked about Nissa and our evaluations of her, I wasn't sure what it was doing in this format, but now it just murders other planeswalkers. It just comes down
and does
real
that, thing.
And it just makes Hydra Crassus feel a lot better.
Yeah, it's just absurd.
Just having the play patterns you have with Nissa are really gross. And I think the other thing with the Sultai deck that we saw the format push to 4 and 5 color builds of both Planeswalkers and Dreadhorde and everything else. And when the format was doing that, Mono Red was taking half the top 8 slots, because you can play a super powerful deck, but if your deck is all Shocklands and you're crossing your fingers on your lands that come in the right agreement,
right.
Wildgrowth Walker is great, but it can't fix all of your problems. So, because here you see, as a person who played Mono Red did not have a good showing.
It was overrepresented in the.
It was overrepresented in that and Gruul both were overrepresented. And I was a part of that representation. So yes, that is for sure. And they beat it. I have to say, just looking at some of the cards that are seeing play because of that now in both these Sultai lists and these Simic and Bant mass manipulation decks, Thinking of like Ripjaw Raptor, for example, is all of a sudden just a stud. I gotta tell you, casting that card now feels like what we thought it was going to feel like before, and that's because, man, those derpy red and green creatures, you just look at it, they're just like,
You got 5 toughness?
I gotta like attack into that and lightning strike it,
You're like such a beefy boy.
and it kills my guy. And you draw how many cards?
2?
I don't think I can survive 5 for once.
Yeah,
so
that's bad.
So yeah, I think like when you look at like Sultai Dread Horde, it is just the most efficient version of that machine. It's not doing the crazy spice things. It's not, which is the 6th spice scroll, by the way, crazy spice. But it is just consistently doing what it's going to do, and that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, and like it really is like it's not surprising for me to see like people just go like, well, we just figured out like what we had to do to Sultai. We took like a long way around to get there, but we figured it out. It's just like jam Planeswalkers and play Command the Dreadhorde, and turns out we didn't need Teferi. And I think like that says a lot for a deck and archetype to be like, yeah, we don't need Teferi, and are still like it's still like some of the most.
Yeah, no,
Powerful
I mean,
thing
if
you can
you
do.
if you pay attention to this is, outside of a couple of removal spells, this deck is designed to purposely not interact with Teferi. It doesn't
Yeah.
need to cast spells on your
And
turn.
yeah, like you have like Assassin's Trophies, and those are just like wholeheartedly powerful cards.
Which is a weakness. Don't get me wrong. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think this deck ever beats like Nexus.
No,
Like ever. So
but then again, like you're kind of having this almost full meta game where you have this deck that beats up on the aggro decks, the Nexus decks would theoretically beat up on this deck, but the Nexus decks feel like way too shut out by the Esper Hero
again,
decks.
we look at Taipei, Nexus is around. So
I'm not saying it doesn't exist
No,
or
no,
it isn't around, but
here's-
it has to pick its metagame.
We
It has
also-
to pick its tournament.
when we have such a diverse format that
Yeah.
even if like this kind of feels like modern now, you know what I mean? Where it's like, you could have a good humans matchup. We see humans being a heavily represented deck, especially in the top 16
Yeah.
of the Invitational. But it doesn't matter because you might not play against it.
Right. And again, like it's just like you that's why we see like modern like shifts so frequently, and like different things are top aiding and doing well and doing bad. It's because people have to pick their tournaments. People have to pick when they're going to like strike in like time to like, bust out a new deck. I mean, if you look at the standard, like it's wild because we have not had a standard this like maybe like the day 2 metagame is artificially diverse by people like having arbitrary differentiations between one list versus another one. But first of all, you have to scroll to see like the rest of the list, which normally for standard it's been like, oh, here are like 6 archetypes, like congratulations. But there are a lot, and maybe some of these are only onesies and twosies, but they're there, and it's a lot more than what we've seen previously in standard. And I think like a lot of people aren't used to that anymore. Because that's not how the metagame has looked for a pretty long time. The modern and standard look, as far as like archetypes represented, is fairly diverse and long, and so we're starting to get sort of that metagame sort of developing where we can actually like do the thing that you typically do in standard, which is pick decks for weekends and not necessarily. Not necessarily just have 4 things that you can possibly play, and realistically, you probably should just be playing X, Y, or Z because the metagame's been solved. I don't think this metagame's been solved, and we're about to get a new set for it, which is pretty exciting. And it's a core set, so maybe it won't be as impactful as some of the other standalone sets, but you never know.
Yeah. Well, let's continue to let's talk about Type A because I know I alluded to it a couple times.
Sure. So we'll take a look here at Type A, which is a standard GP. And again, another standard GP with no coverage, unfortunately. And I think like that's very disappointing.
I think so too, especially when like the top 8 of this was again mentioned pretty diverse. The top 16 was not. Simic and Bant Ramp dominated this event. But the top 8 had some decks that are pretty interesting and have been on the fringes of standard. So Bant Ramp did win though. I'm gonna try it this time, Morgan. Kim Seok Hoon. Yeah. I did it. I did the thing. Defeating Atsuki Kihara on Esper Super Friends Control, which this is a version that had no heroes. Does have some Basilica Bellhaunt still, but it's closer to Esper Control.
Correct. Yeah, we are seeing things like some one more Elder spell that we typically would see a Moment of Craving. We see 4 cast downs, and that's pretty much is what we see replacing
That's the
Hero.
concession for you have to play for Gruul. You have to.
Yeah.
You're not going to beat 6/6s and 4, like stuff like that.
No, not without playing that. Not without having something that generates just infinite blockers.
Right.
And then we actually have Kaio's Wrath's main deck, which I think was probably pretty good this weekend because one of the ways that you can help close the gap between these Nissa decks, these ramp decks, is Kaio's Wrath's really good because it destroys their lands, and that can be fairly devastating depending on where you are in the game. I think that's something that we've seen a lot of Kaio's Wrath in the sideboard of a lot of these Esper decks, but not necessarily main deck in a while because Esper Control has just been unplayable.
Right.
So I think it's an interesting shift and change. Another interesting thing is we have Liliana's Triumphs in the sideboard as well, also for the ramp matchup because you can kill the 2/1s.
Paradise Druid.
Yeah, Paradise Druid, which I think is a pretty big deal, just for the sheer fact that there's a lot of people who just I have 2 lands, Paradise Druid, and they can't kill it. So I'm guaranteed.
I can get my 3 or my 4.
Right, and then you're like,
so.
oops.
Weird. Third place I had Boros Feather.
Yeah, and this is sort of what people might consider a pet deck, and not necessarily something that you would see really show up, be able to compete in this kind of level and top 8 one of these tournaments. But here we are.
That's what I lost in the first round of the Invitational. And now, granted, I flooded in a sea of mountains, but my opponent definitely had a mold of 5 and saw multiple feathers. When I couldn't kill the last feather, the advantage generated was just a lot. And there's only 2 of them here, but in conjunction with Gideon Blackblade, you can turn around board states real quick. Where it's just this is lifelink for a turn. I'll do this. So it does feel like sort of with us going the old heroic decks, which is interesting. So I'm sad that this version didn't have Krenko. A lot of the versions do.
Yeah.
But Legion Warboss in the main is probably not a bad decision for this tournament. So
yeah, it depends. A lot of people I think Shock was probably for this weekend at an all-time low,
right.
Which means that people probably could have got away with playing your Thief of Sanities in
That's
your decks,
true, too.
which would have been great, right? It would have been great in the tournament playing a bunch of Bant Ramp decks.
I disagree because
Really?
they're so bad against Teferi. They're so bad against Teferi. I as a person who played them so much,
more Simic Ramp then, more decks
Simic
that
ramp, but the Bant Ramp is playing it goes Teferi into Shalai most commonly.
That's true.
I don't want to be playing them.
It's true. But then again, then that pretty much, I guess, Warboss then has the advantage of being able to take out that Teferi, right?
Yes, that's the key. And that's why it's about the 3-drop you'd want right now.
Yeah.
I mean, literally the way that you're supposed to board a mono red right now is in the mirror you board in Legion Warboss, even though they have shocks, because you want to stop trading 1 for 1, so you need to try and get a 1/1. Even it's literally that's how it's crazy. So, you also see we get Jund Warriors.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a callback. We had not necessarily we had Gruul Warriors. This is stretching the mana base a little bit farther in order to gain access. Gain access to the status statue combo.
Right.
And obviously you don't need the black there to pull it off. But trust me, if you can have the option of being able to statue something when you need to, it's pretty hard to decline. But everything else about this is definitely a Gruul deck.
Yeah, Chain Whirler felt it's in a weird place in the metagame because against the ramp decks, there are certain board states where it is unbelievable.
Yeah,
and then certain board states where it's
just
worthless.
doesn't matter.
And the status statue is you know what? I'm going to keep you relevant a little bit longer.
I'm going to make you always matter.
The destroying lands to get an attack in on Nissa is something to not ignore. So this could be, if you're going to stick with Gruul, this might be the way you have to start looking again, to get a little bit more of an advantage. A lot of the Gruul decks aren't playing Chain Whirler anymore, but maybe you do to have to beat all the mana creatures.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Domri Chaosbringer, who is still in the format.
He does still exist. And importantly, it is important to note that the new Chandra we talked about, the rare one, looks at the red-green planeswalkers, looks at the red-blue planeswalkers to increase their loyalty. So those may have increased equity with this new 3-drop planeswalker coming in and buffing them up. I think of Ral, the Ral from Guilds of Ravnica, the 5-mana Ral.
Yeah, as a Viceroy.
Yeah, like that card has a relevant ultimate and getting close to it and starts at a relatively high loyalty. So it's like that, this could be a card that you look at that gains a little bit more equity when 2020 comes around.
For sure. We also have 2 copies of Grixis Bolus.
Yeah, this is like, again, this feels like a top 8 full of or top 8, top 16 full of like cards that or decks that are like, oh, that's not a real deck. And then people are just like, oh, here I am.
Arena decks, the tournament.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, like, people really like, well, obviously, both the Nicoboluses that are currently in Standard, they're both really powerful cards. Like, but I'm not going to try to sit here and say that they aren't, but, you are playing a 3-mana deck that might have some challenges dealing with some of the important permanent that exists within the format. And, realistically, you're trying to play this game that other decks probably think they are playing a better game than you are at it. But this could just be one of those tournaments that this, you could definitely say, that they are Planeswalker list. They are playing 10 to 13 Planeswalkers. Depending on if you get to flip your Nicol the Ravager. They are they are a shock deck here, and they have some main deck negates. And I think like that's you have to be saying something within the metagame for like your negates to be good, and like going into a metagame that has like that's just chock full of Teferis.
I think the important thing here is that these decks, specifically this one that was in 5th place, do something that the other decks in the format aren't doing right now, which is they can just kill Planeswalkers.
Yes, that's the point I was going to try to bring up. But like, yeah, you're playing obviously Nicol Dragonfair, but you're also playing Sarkhan, which is pretty effective to just like somehow like you sneak in 4 damage and kill a Planeswalker that you've pinged with a shock or something like that. But you're also playing Angrass Rampage,
and the other list is playing Bedevil.
This was the super deck Bedevil.
Sorry, no, not Bedevil. No, that Bedevil.
Bedazzle. Sorry, excuse
Bedevil
me. There's so many
destroy creature, planeswalker, artifact.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like in Grixis right now, you have more things that just say destroy a planeswalker than anything else, and no one else is really playing Vraska's Contempt. So
yeah, too slow.
So like, if you know that you can just like either shock or rampage, and like Rampage is a really good answer to the Nissas right now. Like, okay, you 5 mana, you made a creature. Sack a Planeswalker. Like that is good for 2 mana.
Yeah, and like you're able to realistically manage the board. Like if they tick down with their Teferi, then you're like, cool, shock it.
Right.
Like the shock's not dead, it killed your Teferi, and then they're like, cool, Nissa, and you're like, awesome, Angrass Rampage. Like we're gonna do this. And then so Ritual Soot is okay. Yeah, Ritual Soot's good too against Nissa lands.
Destroys those lands.
I just want to make sure it said non-land. I didn't say like not like for some reason they escaped it somehow and they don't. That's good.
So yeah, I think like it just like, and again this list has Vraska's Contempt, like I said too. So
yeah.
I just looking at, if you're looking at these decks and you're looking at the other ones, like these are the decks that can deal with Planeswalkers. The negates definitely probably are necessary when you think of things like Command the Dreadhorde. But we talked about this before. Like if you're looking at these, the Planeswalkers straight up, would you rather have a Nicol Bolas or a Teferi? Right now, I'm going to take the Nicol Bolas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the Teferi decks are better. But heads up, like, do you want to tuck the permanent and have to hope to draw an answer, or do you want to just destroy it?
You want to get rid of it.
You know what I mean? And I just want to get rid of it. So yeah, I think Grixis is tough, and I do think that like mono red is more represented than the Grixis decks suffer more than the other decks because their answers aren't as good outside of maybe Moment of Craving. But
yeah,
they don't have something like a Basilica Bell Haunt or something. I guess you have Enter the God Eternals out of the board, which is nice, but yeah, Grixis Bolas. And then there's your Civic Nexus as well in 6th place. Like I said, top 8 of this tournament. So I don't want to talk about it because Nexus sucks. I lost to Nexus in the last round of Standard. Playing mono red. That's how my day went. Yeah, I know it's hard. You have to pour one out for me. It's okay. So okay, I lied. I'm going to talk about one thing here. Kazuki Yada's Civic Nexus deck has a copy of Uncomfortable Chill in the deck, and that's sweet. Creatures opponent control at -2, -0 until a turn. Draw a card. Sometimes you want your Root Snare to cycle. So
yeah, and I think that's fine. I always like Teferi really eats those decks lunch, and
it does.
And like the thing is, I think like people were onto Simic more than they were onto Bant this tournament because I think like just either Bant wasn't necessarily the most like it was just too new of a deck to try to like depend your tournament life on, but Simic was already more of a known quantity as far as like a ramp deck exists, and plus you just have like better mana, like but period. So I think like this was probably the tournament to play like play a deck that didn't necessarily care that much about Teferi.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I do think overall, though, the Bant decks are better.
I think so too.
Its Plan B is a lot better
Yeah.
than the Simic deck. So
I'll agree with that. So I want to move on to talking a little bit about Modern.
yeah, I seriously, I mostly want to talk about the Summer Champs, if that's okay. I know we talked a little about the Invitational. It was won by humans, right? Well,
Correct. Well,
the first place player
that
had
is the
humans.
yeah.
There's a lot of copies of humans. 2 copies of Burn, which I think is interesting. Mono Red Phoenix was another deck that was overrepresented in day 2, which
Really?
I just went with the crowd apparently.
Yeah, geez, that's surprising to be honest.
It's gotten a lot of game. Dave played a different version that I kind of liked at a smaller event on Sunday, but those decks kind of got hated out. Blue White didn't have a huge showing in the top 16, but I lost to Blue White. That's what knocked me out of the tournament.
Gotcha.
And it's Narset is so rough. Like Burn at least doesn't have to worry about the. Yeah, so like things like Faithless Looting not functioning are a little awkward. Watched an opponent do that against Dave. Where Dave had an Narset in play and Blue Red Phoenix, and his opponent's like, "Yeah, I'll cast Faithless Looting." He's like, "Okay, you discard 2 cards." Oops. So that's a good one.
That's a whammy.
Yeah, that hurts for so many reasons.
I do have to personally admit that I have I definitely got by like so many Planeswalker statics on Magic Arena, and it always is the biggest tilt to my life.
Because then they glow red and go womp.
I hate it. I hate it so much. And like it is frequently Narset. Like because like you just don't think about it. Like you just like I gotta do like because all you think about is like
Well,
ways.
like good players do, but
Fair enough. I'm a bad player. That's fine.
Give me your chair.
Give me your chair. But sometimes you just like you're already in like a losing state. I feel like when you already like feel like you're losing or like you got to do this one thing or you're lost and you just do the thing and you're like cool. It's just like the idiot like indicator. You're like cool. I'm an idiot. I get it. I lied. And then like it's the cast this thing, get it like negated by onboard effects, concede due to shame, cry in your bed. And
The flip side's nice though. Sometimes your opponents do it and your things glow, and
yeah,
you go,
but my opponents only do it to me when they're salty and they know they can't. Like they just do it and immediately concede.
Oh.
I guess I just represent that as like salt, not like.
But so I wanted to talk about because like the format hasn't had a ton of stuff, and I think like Modern's in an interesting place. Modern Horizons is about to be legal, and then a little bit after that, we're going to have the London Mulligan, so I think it's about to change.
Yeah,
but I do want to make mention.
No, I don't think it's going to change for the better.
Well, we can see what happens there. But a deck that I was actively testing for the Invitational, and I'm building to, took third and seventh place. Ben Friedman and Jim Davis playing Jeskai Sahili. And when I started playing the Jeskai Sahili list, specifically, I started testing the one from Star City. What was it? I don't know where it was. But I looked there, and the first thing I wanted to do was like, well, 2 Teferi Time Raveler is not enough. Like the goal of playing this deck is to never have a person interact with your combo. I'm playing more Teferis. And I gotta tell you, I watched Teferi do some broken things in Modern. While we were watching a match with Dave, me and another guy watched an opponent have a Teferi in play.
Yep.
Their opponent casts an Narset.
Mm-hmm.
That player then plays a Spellqueller.
Okay.
Counters an Narset. The guy's like, okay, it resolves. I'll path to exile the Spellqueller. The guy's like, okay. Now that guy goes and searches library for his 6th land and puts it into play tapped. And his opponent's like, I'll cast an Narset. And he's like, no, you won't.
You can't.
You cannot cast it right now. You timing restrictions. And his opponent's like, oh. And his opponent slides the card to the graveyard and passes. The opponent untaps his 6 lands, draws return, and then very casually just puts a knowledge pool into play. Like, does it, like, no pomp and circumstance, just like, nah, knowledge pool. And his opponent's like, and then concedes. So it's like, not only did he get wrecked on the I want to cast my Narset, but he ramped his opponent into the 6th land to cast the knowledge pool. So, yeah.
Man, Spellqueller and Teferi. It's pretty good.
But these lists are now up to 4 Teferi Time Raveler, 4 Saheeli Rai, 2 Narsets, and playing for Felidar Guardians and spells. And I really like where this deck is at, and I'm excited. I was only able to purchase 2 Saheeli Rais at the Invitational. Most people did not have them.
That's not surprising.
Including Star City. When I said, hey, do you guys have Saheeli Rais? The person went and looked, came back and said, you meant the new one, right? And I was like, no, Saheeli Rai. And they went back and they came back and said, do you mean the Commander one? I'm like, no, Saheeli Rai. And they're like, oh, the Kaladesh printing? I was like, yeah. The name of the card is Saheeli Rai. And they're like, yeah, we don't have that one. I was like, you wasted. I just did it all you guys. I wasted your lives too. But that interaction happened. But I did get Celestial Colonnades for $10 a piece.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I felt good about that one. So
pretty good.
So, but I'm excited about this deck. I think like any combo you want to play with Teferi is probably pretty good right now. But let me twin.
That's all he wants.
I just want twin.
And like, you've now stumbled across the reason why they can't unban Splinter Twin.
Hey, shut up.
Because Teferi Time Raveler, because it's the format now.
Whatever. I'll just work on making
twin decks are Jeskai twin decks. Yeah, Congratulations.
I'm just gonna make Jeskai Saheeli, Jeskai twin. That's my new goal in life.
Yep.
So I'd been working on the list a little bit, but didn't have enough. 1, I needed cards, and 2, didn't feel like I was confident enough. And then seeing these guys like do this, and I know Jim Davis said he's gonna have an article out about it. I was like, as soon as I clicked on the list, and I was like, 4 Teferi. I was like, you guys have my attention because that's what I wanted to do. So, there is also a Neo brand in the top 8 of this tournament.
Yep.
And that's before the Mulligan rule, so we should at least be aware of it. Because this is the old I kill you on turn 1 deck.
One of potentially 2 that will exist in the format.
Yeah, whatever. I did see a picture on, I can't remember who it was some streamer.
I know what you're talking about. It was Neo Brand versus the Hogak deck?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was Blue White versus the Neo Brand deck.
Oh.
And they had packed the negation, and they got forced of negation, and they packed the negation again, and they got forced of negation again, and that was the stack, and then the Neo Brand player conceded.
No, I saw the one that was the Neo Brand deck playing against the Hogak deck and being like, this is modern, this is your format.
Yeah, that is a whole other thing. So yeah, we'll see what the format looks like. The Hogak deck is certainly powerful, but as another deck that like I don't know, like does it win with Leyline of the Void or like Rest in Peace in play?
It now, if you were to like to play it now, no, but they've been adapting.
It can adapt. It's going to have
they've
to
been
adapt.
adapting.
But any deck that has to adapt like that out of pure combo slows down. Like that's just how it functions. So we'll see where that deck lands. Neobrand doesn't need the graveyard, doesn't have that natural counterpoint besides counterspell. So if there was a deck that said I would like to have force of negation, it's probably this one. But now there's now just 4 summoners packed, or I'm sorry, 4 up to 4 packed negation depending on the build. So this one only has 1 in the main, so there you go, 2 in the sideboard. But I think like when you see these decks do well on paper without the mulligan rule, you have to like the deck's good enough, you can run hot enough to just do it, and then when you have a pretty competent mulligan like scenario, then it gets scary.
Yeah, got some Autumn's Veil in the sideboard. Hole 3.
Dear Lord, yeah, I forgot about that card.
Yeah, a card that does exist. Normally, the like the green hate cards are like fairly bad to unplayable, but sometimes you figure it out.
Yeah, I guess you're not wrong. So, but yeah, I think Modern's an interesting place. I think it's interesting that there's we have Jeskai control here in 9th place, Roger Bodie, but we've also had a lot of blue-white control decks. I do think that this is sort of where I was leaning if I was going to play this. I talked about how I saw a lot of decks playing multiple Jace the Mind Sculptors, but all of the blue-white X decks are playing generally 4 Narsets now. I don't know how often you can keep playing 4 Jace the Mind Sculptor if your opponent.
A lot of them are playing 2, and
but I think here playing none, I feel like that's the right answer. Teferi is powerful enough because at least it can interact with the board a little bit more than Jace can, and you have some more time before you really want to stick Jace. But it could just be for monetary considerations because I didn't want to buy Jaces. I bought blue-white cards this weekend, did not buy Jaces. But
right.
I think also that I don't ever want to be in the position where I guess I'm fate sealing you because I can't 0.
Yeah,
and that's gross. So yeah, Modern still feels fairly diverse, but still feels like it's going the wrong direction interactively.
Yep.
You can play a lot of decks at your opponent.
And to be honest, it's hard. It's really hard, and it's more and more becoming a glaring fact that the graveyard is a problem point in the Modern format, and they don't know how to fix it.
No, I mean you have the most robust answers ever printed. It's not like there's something sitting it's not like there was something sitting in Legacy that they could have brought into Modern Horizons that would have changed it. We have Rest in Peace, we have Ley Lines, we have Relic of Progenitus. You have Scavenging Ooze, which granted doesn't seem to play anymore, but you have a lot of robust answers for graveyard decks that aren't fast enough.
So, is it because the graveyard decks in Modern aren't necessarily spell based? If that makes any sense.
Oh no, you have to take game actions to interact with them. They don't have to take real game actions.
They don't have to take
you.
because I think of what were the prominent graveyard focus decks in Legacy? And the first one that comes to mind is obviously Black Red Reanimator,
lands,
and lands as well. But Black Red Reanimator obviously you have to play a reanimation spell.
Right.
And that's your interaction.
And Force
point.
of Will is still your
Force of Will, or even something like a Flusterstorm or something
right.
like that, which now will be in Modern.
Sure.
But I don't think are we going to see? I think it's difficult because obviously then are we going to Flusterstorm the Faithless Looting now, which could be the thing. But then they just buy it back later, which maybe all you need is just to slow them down for a turn and then. No big deal.
And again, I'll keep making this point until I'm blue in the face, but the thing that people don't seem I think when you compare those formats, you are doing a Force of Will check with a lot of decks, and I don't like Legacy. Well documented on this podcast before, but one of the major things you have in Legacy, in Modern, they have handcuffed the selection spells for blue specifically, so much because they're afraid of Storm instead of just banning Storm. You know what I mean? So other decks are allowed to have crazy cantrips to find their things. Faithless Looting, I use, Ancient Stirrings, those sorts of things. But then the blue decks, you're saying oh well, maybe this hit the Flusterstorm. Okay, you have to have it. And in Legacy, you have Brainstorm. You are most of the time when you're trying to have it against an opponent. If your turn one wasn't a Thoughtseize or some other piece of interaction, right? Then you get to see up to 10 cards before you do or do not have it. And like, I'm not saying we should have Brainstorm in Modern, because I don't think we should have Brainstorm in Modern. But, like, maybe we should have Ponder. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to have Force of Negation. Because, people talk to, like, how ubiquitous is Force of Negation going to be? Well, you're going to have to play a pretty heavy blue commitment to make it a free spell.
Yeah.
You don't have, again, Brainstorm to ensure your hand is set up the right way to always use Force of Negation. And if you've ever played enough, if you played Legacy a fair amount, you know that when you're playing against a combo deck and you have Force of Will, well, if you play too conservatively, you still just die, because eventually they have more than one answer or more than one way to do it. So Modern, I think Modern Horizons tried very meekly to give some answers. Flusterstorm's real. Force of Negation, it may or may not be real. There was some positive buzz about it this weekend, but
I think there was a Magic. The Modern Challenge was won by a blue-white deck.
Yeah,
playing some
I know and I didn't put this list on here, and I should have, because obviously Hogak, those decks did well. But when you think about those interaction points, like even if you think about like Force of Negation, like if they manage to resolve their Altar, which is what, 2 mana, right? Altar of Dimensions, 2 mana, then Force of Negation doesn't stop the combo,
right?
Because it can never counter Hogak.
Right.
So like they put weird answers in, and then they let Modern be a format where they ask, do you have it? But of course, like, do you have what? The linear combo is much stronger than the answer. Whereas in Modern or in Legacy, like, Force of Will is the equalizer. It counters everything. So I don't know. I still think I think at the end of the day, when you look at this, maybe they could have just put Force of Will in and it not been an issue. But we'll find out.
We certainly will. Best of luck to everyone who is battling a Magic Online and in the Modern queues. But you're right. The format does have an opportunity to adjust, and there are a lot of things that can answer the graveyard. And maybe people are just going to have to do what they used to do with like Dredge when they had like Troll, where it's like you go really hard in the paint on graveyard hate, and then I guess lose to a bunch of other sort of decks. But I don't know. I'm going to say that Wizards. Why didn't you print Containment Priest in Modern Horizons? Why didn't you do it?
Yeah, that seems odd to like.
Why didn't you do it?
Make Hogak and then.
Why? Are you going to put it in 2020? Are you going to do that? Because you know what? Okay, all right. Card probably a little bit too powerful for Standard in my opinion, but
is it?
I don't know. It's
good against like March the Multitudes.
It's good against parts of Command the Dreadhorde.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's good. I guess it doesn't hit the Planeswalkers.
No. The Planeswalkers still happen. Creatures don't. The Planeswalkers still happen. So hey, you know what? All's forgiven if it's in 20 Core Set 2020. All is forgiven.
I will say some people also thought of there are some unique ways you could interact with the Hogak deck. Like
I know one that was talked about today on like Versus Live was Yixla Jailer.
Sure. Somebody I rode in the car with this weekend mentioned just like depending on your deck, sticking a singleton copy of something like a Gaia's Blessing in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're not playing like surgical or anything, especially in the main right now. So like they just start milling you, and you're like, okay, well, shuffle trigger. Those are awkward because you can always draw it.
Yeah, and it's also awkward because they could always just kill you.
Well, sure, maybe they could. I mean, it depends on what you're doing. So,
sure.
But I think that's at least interesting. You could find things that obviously you could go back to like builds of Tron that are playing like an Emrakul or something that gets the shuffles in.
That's a tall glass of water to try to like realistically cast in that deck for sure. But
I mean,
maybe you just have it for insurance.
They used to.
They also used to have Iavu.
Yeah, well, whatever. But like maybe that just makes sure that you always have a turn to O-stone them or something before they go off. So again, drawing it's awkward, but
Tron has a little bit of an advantage because they do get to play like main deck Relic of Progenitus, which helps. I mean, somewhat.
There's a lot of decks that could just play main deck Relic of Progenitus too. Yeah. I think that's important. I think the problem we've seen builds of blue white that are playing main deck Rest in Peace, and like when you look at the format right now. I don't think I could fault you for it.
No, but I think so much of the format revolves around graveyards.
But I think like if that is your answer, we talked about that before, and this is where we should probably end because this is a lot. But
yeah,
we've talked about this before. If that's where the answer is, if the answer lies in how many decks can play main decks of this effect and they're really good, then you have to admit that the format is severely broken. So
yeah, like it's completely bent into like one like zone of the game, like one area of play, and so many decks exist in the format now that can freely abuse it and then can consistently beat hate.
Yeah.
and on multiple different axes, and it's just like, okay, what's the deal? And like, not to say that other formats don't also like Legacy plays a lot out of the graveyard as well. It just doesn't feel as like oppressive.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, I observed it doesn't feel that impressive.
Well,
but I don't play. So.
This week's episode of At Your End Step was brought to you by Signature Spellbook Gideon, featuring featuring copies of Rest in Peace. So
pre-order now. It comes out the end of June. This is going to be where we end the show this week. So appreciate you listening wherever you're listening from. If you want to reach out to us, you can do so via multiple different methods. We have a Twitter. It is your endstep, and when you add us, it's at your endstep. We also have an email address at yourendstep@gmail.com, and then we lastly have Facebook, facebook.com/@yourendstep. If you're listening to us via a podcast app that'll let you leave a rating and review for our show, we would super appreciate you doing so. We truly feel we're a 5-star podcast. We hope that you agree. If you're listening to us via MTG, Legit MTG, thank you so much for picking up the show. Do be sure to check out some of the articles they have on the website as well as their online store. Also, we are trying to get our show back on MTG Cast. So MTG Cast is back up, and I've already submitted to get our show back up there. I haven't heard back yet about getting the show back in my name on the actual login and everything like that. But I just checked it on a whim, and it was like, oh, it's back up. So we are working on that, and hopefully you'll be seeing us there soon in your MTG Cast feed when we get that back up and running. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/@yourendstep. Thank you so much to our patrons, and I hope you have been enjoying Mike's Book Nook. We are through Acts 1 and Act 2. I finished the book today. I did it. I got my card stamped for the Pizza Hut pizza, so I got my book it thing. I don't even know.
It is summertime.
So we'll be...
That's what you go to the library and be like, hey, I read this book. And they'll be like, you're a grown man. You'll be like, I want pizza. I read the book.
This is how this exchange happens. I read books, I get pizza.
Just give me the pizza coupon, lady.
I know you have them.
You want to see what I can do to these books?
Again, but this goes back to the Evergreen. Like, this is a Walmart or this is a library.
Sir, this is a Wendy's.
Sir,
we don't even serve pizza.
Oh, man. There you go. If you want to restore, reading to adults, have an adult book it program. That's all I'm saying. Just do it.
I assume an adult book it program isn't pizza. It's just beer. And that's fine. That's also fine.
Good. Great.
Every 10 pages is a beer.
Ooh, that's a lot. There's some of them books. Have you seen? Are we reading picture books? I don't want to get wasted.
I think that's a challenge. It has to be a Lexile level that's appropriate for high school or higher age.
Fair enough.
So
there
you
right.
go.
But we hope you have been enjoying Mike's Book Nook, and we are going to record Act 3 here soon. So, and then we'll be done with that book, and then maybe read some emails that have stories in them, I guess, and talk about those later on. I don't know. I heard they're better. From the Vorthos cast, I did hear that they're better.
That makes it sound like that's when your grandma emails you, and you haven't heard from her in a while, and she's just like, "Let me tell you about all the things." I got another story email.
But that is going to be everything for us this week. Be sure to come to the Comic Town MCQ again this Saturday, the 15th, and we'll see you down there. But until next time, you have a great one.
Bye.